Welcome back, my friends, to TFT Hyperroll with Autarch, and a different type of episode today because we're not going to focus on a build. Instead, we're going to focus on some champs. I've been asked before what is the best one cost, and the actual answer is it depends. But what we're going to do in this video is go through the top 5 one costs that you can start your game with as a headliner and carry through the entire game without having to sell them and transfer over to someone else. We're going to go in reverse order from 5 to 1, and this is done with hyperroll in mind, so we're planning teams of 10 when we're doing this. Coming in at number 5 is Olaf in either Bruiser or Pentakill form, because you're able to get to the 7 Pentakills in either form. Your 2 absolutely essential items are Bloodthirster and Titans Resolve, in this case Gargantuan's Resolve, because it's going to make him bigger. For a 3rd item, you can go with either Rageblade or Steric's Gauge, depending on the situation. Rageblade is going to cause him to attack faster, which will enable him to just chop more things up. Steric's Gauge will give him an additional shield so that he can stand up a little bit longer. Of course, only try this strategy if you get him to gold 3 stars, otherwise look to trade him out. If you get Bruiser Olaf, look to build more Bruisers. You want to at least get to 4, as you will be able to get to the 4 Bruiser 7 Pentakill. Preferably, you can go with 6 Bruisers and 5 Pentakill for the strongest possible Olaf if you want him to carry you into the late game. Overall, in the right circumstances, with the right luck, Olaf is going to carry you through early and mid game. Late game, you are likely going to have to look to someone else to take over to carry, such as a Viego or Karthus, but either way, you're going to be into the top 4. Let's move on to our number 4 champion, and that is Yasuo, either in true damage or edgelord's form. The key is, of course, getting him to gold 3 stars. If you can 3-star him early enough and get the right items, Yasuo is likely to carry you through early and mid game. The right items for me: Bloodthirster, Titans Resolve, and Edge of Night. It allows him to drop aggro when he gets low, will give him a shield also when he gets low, and will allow him to just keep going forward. As for building around him, if you get the edgelord Yasuo, you can get to 6 true damage and 7 edgelord pretty easily, since we have teams of 10 and there are 6 true damage in the game. If you get true damage Yasuo, unless you get some emblems, you're going to stop at 6 true damage and then just build out your edgelords, and depending how the game is going, end up with a flex champion that can help enhance the overall team. I was torn whether to put Yasuo at 4 or 5 because while the build seems a little bit easier than the Olaf build, they still haven't fixed that tooltip, so I don't know if he's getting his proper damage boost, but they both have similar problems because as a melee champion, asking him to carry, Yasuo is very difficult because he's going to get pretty squishy even with Bloodthirster and Edge of Night. But it still should be enough to carry you pretty reliably into the top 4. And this brings us to number 3, which is going to go to Emo Annie. Notice I said Emo Annie. I've found that much more effective than Spellweaver Annie because getting the Emo bonus and the potential to take it to 6 is so much better for potential late game. You want to try your best to get Superfan out on the board as quick as possible, so Annie will get her Superfan item, which is a jeweled gauntlet. That is going to be absolutely key for the Annie strategy. After that, you can start bringing in your emo champs, and you're going to generally stay at 3 Superfans because you're going to bring in Nico once you get her, and then use that to catapult into KDA as well. In a perfect world, you're going to get some mana producing item, whether it's Spear of Sojourn or Blue Buff is fine, and then a Nashter's Tooth just to increase her attack speed, which will increase the amount that she's casting, and with the Jeweled Gauntlet, a lot of those are going to crit, which is going to lead to an immense amount of damage coming out of the one little girl in the corner. If you end up with an early 3-star Annie with the full item components, expect to frustrate your entire lobby, because you're likely to completely dominate early and mid-game and not really leave them much ability to battle against you. So you may be asking yourself, with how strong she is in early and mid-game and how much she's wiping out teams, why is she number 3 and not number 1 and number 2? It's partially because of the build that you need around her. You're ending up with KDA, which means your board is going to be pretty set for you. Further, the build in general is just not that tanky. You don't have any really strong tanks, and Annie is a full glass cannon. So towards endgame, when you're starting to get some real power in other teams, you start to take losses. The one good thing is you likely carried yourself into the top 4. Coming in at number 2, we have Corky, and that's going to be in any form, big shot or 8-bit, as either one will work. My preferred items for Corky are Rageblade, Infinity Edge, and Deathblade, so you're going to get a ton of power out of him. While it's not showing in the footage that I have here, normally you can get a Garen, so Corky is going to be getting stronger throughout the game, thanks to also getting 8-bit, unless you picked him up with an 8-bit headliner in the first place. And this is a large part of the reason why Corky makes it into the top 2. He's ranged and will continue to be gaining power throughout the match, which makes him really, really effective for holding up even as the game carries on. Since if you're doing it properly, you have him behind a wall of sentinels that is going to be hard to break through. With the slight nerf to sentinels, late game you might start to see some trouble in your front line in terms of some of the more powerful comps, such as Twisted Fate, will be able to cut through them and get to your Corky, but by that point you're likely already into the top 4. Now, before I leave Corky and reveal number 1, I just want to explain why he's not number 1, and it's simply because even in his most powerful form with 6 8-bit double Deathblade and Rageblade, he will ultimately cede the top damage to a bunch of other people on the board. As you can see, he's 3rd in that round. But as much as I love playing Corky comps, and people who have been to the lives know I do, it does not hold a candle to our number 1, Rapid Fire Jinx. You had to know this was coming, didn't you? Fashion up Jinx with a Rageblade and then Infinity Edge, Deathblade, any other damage amplifiers, and she is going to dominate the early, mid, and likely the late game too, which is why she's my number 1 for this. Your whole requirement is to get the Guardians in front, which is going to include a Pantheon triggered Punk, so you're getting cheap rolls, make a Mumu your tank, and you're off to the races. Something you will likely notice about Jinx that doesn't necessarily apply to anyone else on this list is throughout the entire game, she has a really good chance of being your damage leader in every single round. And I think this has to do with how her ult works and how the Rageblade works with it, because when she switches her gun type, she's doing additional damage, and so she can do more damage than a lot of these other one-cost champs, along with the punk bonus that she's getting throughout. But notice this game is going to end with Jinx leading the damage charts. But okay, that was no one else itemized. What happens when we throw her in against a 3-item Caitlyn and a Lucian with a Deathblade? Is it going to be any different? I would probably bet that either Caitlyn or Lucian is going to lead the damage at the end, and while, yeah, it's going to be very close, Jinx still comes out ahead. So Jinx is our number 1. Hope you enjoyed this video and it helps you on your trip to the hyper tier, and as always, have an absolutely awesome day.